Nothing is cheap at all in gold mining. The sluice boxes were around $5,000 each. So it's good to see them being put to use instead of just sitting there getting rusty.
The desert wind carried a ghostly howl across the barren hills, where rusting machinery stood like skeletons of a forgotten empire. For decades, this mine was a graveyard, abandoned shafts, toxic pools, and a silence so heavy it drowned out the memory of riches once clawed from the earth. Investors fled. Families who had staked everything were left broken. By 2019, it was over, or so everyone thought. Then two men walked into the ruins with nothing but raw instinct and an impossible vision. Freddy Dodge, a weathered prospector with decades of scars and triumphs etched into his skin, and Juan Ibarra, a mechanic whose hands could resurrect machines thought beyond repair. To the locals, their arrival seemed like madness. The mine wasn't just dead, it was cursed. Yet Freddy and Juan didn't come to salvage scraps. They came to rewrite the story. And before we uncover how they turned ruin into riches, make sure to like this video and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The first signs of life came in the darkest corner of the pit, an overlooked shaft sealed after a collapse in the 1980s. Records showed it yielded nothing, but Freddy spotted a vein pattern others had dismissed as worthless. He recognized a geological fracture, a kind that could trap millions in gold if chased deep enough. To him, it wasn't rubble. It was a riddle waiting to be solved. But riddles don't solve themselves. The mine was drowning in toxic water, poisoned by arsenic runoff that had driven crews away. Juan set to work, engineering a Frankenstein system of pumps, scavenged from scrapyards across the state. The pipes groaned, the engines coughed, and after weeks of trial and error, the water level dropped. What had been a suffocating tomb was now open ground, ready to be tested. And that's when the first anomaly appeared. In soil samples, Freddy sent to a lab. Traces of microscopic gold particles surfaced, particles invisible to the naked eye, but undeniable proof of something bigger buried below. It was a whisper of wealth, a glimmer that turned despair into obsession. Word spread fast. The old mining families, the ones who had abandoned this site generations earlier, began to resurface, demanding answers. Rumors of lawsuits circulated. Some claimed Freddy and Juan were trespassing on land never meant to be touched again. The tension grew thick, but the men pressed on, convinced the mine was hiding a secret worth the fight. When the first test drill broke through, the ground gave up more than ore. It released pockets of gas that hadn't seen daylight in half a century. The explosions shook the rig, nearly costing the crew their lives. The air filled with the smell of sulfur and decay, a reminder that the earth doesn't surrender its treasures without blood. Still, Freddy's calculations held. What came from that shattered core sample stunned everyone. Veins streaked with quartz, flecked with gold so pure it rivaled the grades once pulled from Nevada's most legendary fields. It wasn't just a discovery, it was the confirmation of a gold system stretching deeper, richer, and more dangerous than anyone had guessed. But striking gold isn't the same as holding it. The deeper they dug, the more violent the mine became. Equipment broke under strain. Juan, with nothing but his torch and an endless will, rebuilt machines in the field that should have taken months to repair. Each fix bought them more time, more depth, more ounces of possibility. And possibility soon turned into proof. The first cleanup revealed gold worth tens of thousands, still modest, but enough to prove the dying mine wasn't dead, enough to lure in speculators and shadowy buyers who appeared out of nowhere, offering cash, equipment, even secret partnerships. Freddy refused. He had seen what greed did to miners, how fast fortunes could vanish when promises outweighed patience. Then came the most shocking twist yet. Beneath one of the old tunnels, Juan's sensors picked up a hollow chamber. At first, it looked like a void left by blasting, but when they broke through, they found something stranger: tools, rusted helmets, and carved initials from miners who had disappeared decades ago. It wasn't just a chamber, it was a crypt of lost history, frozen in time. And yet the walls of that crypt told another story. Under the beam of their lights, veins shimmered like stars, frozen in stone. Freddy scraped the surface with his pick, and the flake that fell into his palm gleamed with a brilliance that no assay could deny. But this wasn't just about gold, it was about scale. The samples showed grades so high they bordered on the impossible, as if the mine itself had been holding back its true wealth until the right hands forced it awake. Yet every strike of the hammer came with risk. Deeper passages revealed fractures crisscrossing like scars, unstable and ready to collapse at the slightest vibration. Old dynamite, left behind by miners long gone, lay buried in the rubble, sweating, unstable and deadly. One wrong move could have blown the entire operation to dust. Juan, crawling through the tunnels with nothing but a headlamp and nerves of steel, marked each charge, carefully defusing them with tools that looked like they belonged in a war zone. Every success meant survival. Every mistake would have ended it all. Above ground, strange visitors began arriving. Black SUVs parked on ridges, men with clipboards watching the site without saying a word. Some claimed to be environmental inspectors, but no credentials were ever shown. Drones hovered overhead at night, their red lights blinking like predators circling prey. Freddy recognized the pattern: competitors, corporations, maybe even old claimants circling like vultures. The mine wasn't just breathing again, it was attracting a storm. Still, the evidence couldn't be hidden. When the first full cleanup hit the smelter, the bars that emerged were pure enough to draw whispers of an ancient deposit, something untouched since the early 1900s rushes that built empires. Each bar carried not just weight, but history, as if the ghosts of the first prospectors were finally being paid their dues. But wealth has a way of feeding chaos. The higher the yield, the heavier the pressure. And Freddy knew they had crossed a line. And then the maps shifted. In resurveying the site, Juan discovered an anomaly far beneath the deepest shafts, a magnetic distortion, suggesting a massive ore body trapped under a dome of solid rock. No one had ever reached it. No one had dared. To touch it would require drilling through ancient faults, risking floods, collapses, even earthquakes. But if it was what the instruments suggested, it wasn't just a vein. It was a motherlode. The push for depth became a war against time. Water surged back through cracks faster than the pumps could fight it. The machinery screamed, overheating in the relentless dust. Juan's nights blurred into mornings as he rebuilt engines from scrap, forging parts no supplier could provide. In the shadows of the operation, men whispered that he wasn't just a mechanic, he was a surgeon, keeping the heart of the mine alive with improvised miracles. But miracles couldn't mask the rising hostility. Local authorities arrived, demanding inspections, claiming the blasting endangered nearby water tables. Protesters appeared at the gates, accusing Freddy and Juan of poisoning the desert. Yet behind closed doors, different voices whispered offers. Foreign investors waving contracts, bankers promising fortunes if the men would just hand over control. Each rejection sharpened the threat. Freddy's refusal wasn't just defiance, it was survival. Underground, the earth itself pushed back harder. One tunnel collapsed without warning, sealing off a path just minutes after the crew had cleared it. The sound was like thunder trapped in a coffin, and when the dust settled, the air turned thin, choking, almost unbreathable. But even as danger closed in, the broken rock revealed something that froze Freddy where he stood. Crystalline formations riddled with visible, free-milling gold, so abundant it looked painted into the stone by fire itself. It wasn't just valuable, it was legendary. What they had uncovered wasn't a mine in recovery. It was a vault of secrets, some geological, some human, some buried, for reasons no one wanted unearthed. And each strike of the pick was pushing them closer to something far larger and far deadlier than they ever expected. The proof came with every new core they pulled from the rock. Shards carried not only gold, but silver, copper, and rare minerals fused in ways geologists couldn't easily explain. This wasn't a standard ore body. It was an anomaly, a hidden system untouched by classification. Under the floodlights, Freddy studied the veins, and for a fleeting second, he swore they pulsed like living arteries, as if the mountain itself were resisting extraction. Then came the first sabotage. At dawn, one of the pumps was found gutted, wires severed clean, the casing dented with deliberate force. It wasn't wear, it was human. The security cameras caught only shadows, slipping between the ridges. Figures gone before dawn broke. But the timing was perfect. Just as they neared the richest zone, the lifeline that kept the mine from drowning was severed. Freddy tightened security. But the message was clear. They weren't alone in this pursuit. The sabotage only fueled the urgency. Juan cobbled together a replacement system in record time, piecing metal with welding sparks that lit the tunnels like lightning. When the pumps roared back to life, they revealed a cavity no one expected. A chamber carved by miners who had clearly been here before. On its walls, faded notes scrawled in charcoal mapped out veins that disappeared into darkness. The handwriting matched records of men who vanished without explanation nearly half a century earlier. What they had uncovered wasn't just a mine. It was a graveyard of forgotten expeditions. As the drills pushed lower, they cut into stone that rang like metal. Buried deep inside the chamber's wall was a lattice of timber, perfectly preserved, bracing tunnels that no map acknowledged. Freddy's lamp revealed pick marks older than any claim record. Someone had reached for this gold long before modern times, and their work had been buried, sealed, erased. The realization settled cold. This wasn't just untapped wealth. It was stolen history resurfacing. The breakthrough came with a sound like tearing bone. Rock split open, and the cavity beyond was not empty. It glittered with sheets of exposed gold, layered so densely the walls themselves gleamed like mirrors. The crew stood stunned. They weren't chasing veins anymore. They had walked into a chamber where the earth had fused treasure into its very skin. The discovery spread faster than fire. Phone calls arrived from foreign numbers offering immediate buyouts. Helicopters began circling overhead, too low, too frequent to be coincidence. At night, gunshots cracked in the distance, ricocheting across the canyon walls. Fear seeped into the crew, but Freddy refused to shut down. Every bar they smelted added weight to their defiance. It was then that the second collapse struck. A roar swallowed the eastern tunnel, dust blasting out with the force of a cannon. When silence fell, half the chamber was sealed, cutting them off from the richest section. But in the chaos, something unexpected was revealed, a seam of black rock threaded with gold so fine it looked like woven hair. Tests confirmed it wasn't just high grade. It was among the purest concentrations ever recorded, worth tens of millions if extracted carefully. The danger escalated to obsession. Juan's machines tore deeper, biting into rock as if chasing something alive. Sparks showered from grinding drills, engines screamed, and the ground trembled like a beast stirring beneath them. Each meter down seemed to invite disaster. Floods bursting through cracks, poisonous gases seeping up, cave-ins triggered by their own momentum. But the readings never lied. The ore body below was colossal, stretching farther than their maps could capture. Then, one night, the ground itself groaned with a tremor that rattled windows miles away. Seismologists from a nearby university appeared at the gate, demanding access, claiming Freddy's drilling was destabilizing the region. They hinted that the deposit lay along a fault line, tied to larger seismic structures, suggesting their pursuit wasn't just risky. It might wake something catastrophic. Freddy weighed the warning, but in his eyes, the jackpot had already taken shape. And when the next cleanup was poured, the furnace spat out a bar so heavy it bent the mold, glimmering with a weight that silenced the crew. Valued at millions in a single pour, it marked the moment speculation ended. The dying mine had not only been resurrected, it was now a jackpot of staggering scale. But as the gold grew, so did the shadows watching, circling, waiting for the moment to strike. That silence stretched, heavier than the gold itself. The crew stood frozen, eyes locked on the glowing bar, as though it were forbidden. Freddy broke the trance first, dragging his fingers across its surface, the heat searing his skin, but he didn't flinch. This was proof that the desert had given up something extraordinary. Yet with every ounce of gold they revealed, the danger sharpened. The instant it existed, so did the risk of losing it. The threats no longer hid in shadows. A convoy of unmarked trucks appeared on the ridge one morning, their engines idling like beasts waiting for a signal. Men stepped out, scanning the site with military precision. They carried no logos, no words, only a presence that sent every worker's heart racing. Freddy ordered the crew underground, sealing the entrances with loaders and debris. Above them, the engines growled, unmoving, watching, a siege without bullets. Below, the mine revealed its final weapon. As drills cut into the faulted dome, the rock screamed, an echo so violent it rattled helmets and cracked lamps. Water burst upward in jets, sulphurous and steaming, flooding shafts faster than pumps could hold back. But mixed in that torrent were flecks of visible gold, tumbling like sparks in the flood. The crew scooped handfuls from the water, watching fortunes slip through their fingers even as the tunnels threatened to drown them alive. In the chaos, Juan's scanner pinged again. Through the rising flood, a hollow cavity appeared on his map, larger than any chamber yet. They forced the drills through collapsing stone, and suddenly the mountain gave way, opening a cavern that swallowed their light. Inside, walls dripped with quartz veins, glowing faintly under mineral-rich moisture, as though lit from within. It wasn't just ore. It was a cathedral of gold, untouched, uncountable, stretching farther than beams could reach. The find was biblical in scale, but time was their enemy. The ground shook, collapsing pillars, and dust swallowed the cavern. The crew barely scrambled out, dragging samples clutched to their chests, while behind them, the cathedral sealed itself in a deafening roar. What little they carried was enough to confirm it. The jackpot was real, but it lay in a place too volatile, too unstable to tame. Above ground, the siege had vanished. No trucks, no men, only tire tracks in the dust spiraling away into the horizon. But left behind was something stranger. A single crate, locked, with Freddy's name scrawled across its lid. Inside they found not threats, not weapons, but documents, survey maps, deeds, and contracts marked with signatures of companies that had long since dissolved. Some were dated decades earlier, others centuries, bearing seals no modern entity could explain. Whoever had left them knew the mine's history in ways even Freddy could not. Then came the final blow. Days later, satellites tracked a surge of seismic activity directly beneath the mine, an event recorded by monitoring stations worldwide. Reports labeled it minor, harmless, but the locals knew better. The Earth had shifted, swallowing half the operation in a sinkhole that left nothing but dust and silence. When rescuers searched, they found no trace of the cavern, no tunnels, no cathedral of gold. The desert had closed its mouth, yet rumors spread faster than the collapse. Whispers of the gold bars that had already left the site, of private auctions where samples sold for millions, of buyers who spoke in riddles about veins that shouldn't exist. Freddy and Juan vanished from public view, their names surfacing only in fragments. Court filings, sightings in border towns, rumors of hidden vaults built into mountainsides. And somewhere, in a safe no one admits exists, lies a single bar from the final pour. A bar too heavy to lift without both hands, stamped not by a refinery, but by the mine itself. Its surface etched with natural patterns that look less like veins and more like a map no one has yet dared to follow.